This is the Kia EV6 GT, the high-performance version of Kia's best electric car. It's a rocket in a straight line.
Oh, that EV6 is fast!
You've also got 740 Newton meters of torque, which is insane.
Am I having fun? I'm not 100% sure I am. This car makes 585 horsepower, 740 Newton meters of torque, and I think that should make for some pretty alarming acceleration. How alarming? Let's find out.
Had him off the line. Oh, come on! Here he comes now, though. Come on, petrol! Bye-bye! Oh, thank God for that.
Big green button. Accelerate. Pray. Oh, yep. Yeah, I'm alarmed. I'm alarmed. My God. Okay, so that's impressive for a few reasons. First of all, because it's a Kia. Secondly, because it's pulling harder than an Aston Martin DB12. It's quicker to 60 than a Ferrari 458 Italia, for goodness sake.
3, 2, 1.
And we're off and we're away. Come on, hook up, hook up. Little bit of wheel spin from both of us. Oh, that EV6 is fast. Pick your braking point, pick your braking point. It's not too deep on it. It's better, that's better. Let's hit that cone. And now feed the power. A little bit squirrely. Come on, Black Ghost! I think it's in the bag, I think it's in the bag. Do it for Detroit! Oh my God. 110 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour, 130 miles an hour. Oh man! Victory to the silent assassin.
Its official 0 to 62 time is quicker than the Audi RS e-tron GT. It'll leave a Porsche Taycan Sport Turismo for dead. But maybe that's not so surprising given the price. But I had a look on Auto Trader, and get this, you can actually buy a Porsche Taycan, a couple of years old, 20,000 miles on the clock, for the same price as one of these. Food for thought.
So first things first, you've got your GT badge there and a larger roof spoiler. They've also redesigned the rear bumper slightly. It's fairly subtle, but now the car has this sort of diffusory thing going on there, and these reflectors are vertical rather than horizontal. Here's the rear of a normal GT line model so you can compare the difference. Okay, moving down the side, you get 21-inch alloy wheels as standard with a unique design. Then you probably noticed as well, look what's going on with those brake calipers. Yes, on this GT version, you get this lime green luminous high-vis effect on the brake calipers. Reminds me of a Porsche e-hybrid.
Like on the inside of the EV6 GT, well, a lot like the normal EV6 to be honest, but that's no bad thing because the cabin is quite nice. The major difference is the splash of color you now get. So you get this lime green stitching around the inside of the steering wheel, a nice big lime green GT button which unleashes the full fury of the car, and lime green piping and stitching on these new sport seats, which look quite fetching, don't they? They've got suede in the middle, the green stitching, and also a GT badge with some chrome detailing in the back. Nice touch. They also give you a lot more support in the corners than your standard seats, but not where it concerns your neck. In the standard car, you get quite a lot of neck support, but in this, when you accelerate, your head goes flying back pretty much all the time, so that's something to bear in mind. Also worth bearing in mind is the fact that these side bolsters down here really do dig into your thighs, especially on your accelerator leg, and after a while that can get quite annoying. But it's not as annoying as the fact that these seats don't have electric adjustment. No, if I want to adjust them, I've got to move it back and forth by myself. £62,000 and I don't have electrical adjustment. I guess the one good thing is that when you're charging up and you've got a few moments to kill, you can actually recline these seats really quickly, which is, I don't know, slightly better than waiting for the motor to do it. But come on, 62 grand. I need electrically adjustable seats, people.
Here on the inside, there are only a few changes over the standard Kia EV6. The most notable are the sport seats, which are very comfy, and actually more comfy than the standard seats because those have a headrest which sort of push your head forward into a bad posture position. Not so with these. I prefer them. Also, the GT gets this unique lime green stitching to match the calipers. And also, you've got the GT button there. More on that in a bit. Other than that, it's pretty much identical. So overall quality is pretty good. There are a couple of scratchy plastics lower down, but it does feel solid. Really clever design. I like the way you can toggle in between the infotainment system and the climate control, and you have some physical buttons for the climate control. The infotainment system is okay, a little bit laggy at times, but it's fine. And you've got a big digital driver's display. I also like the fact that you get some really good surround view cameras. Very handy when you're parking, like you can look all the way around the car. You've got a little 3D image of it there. And this feature, which I love, when you indicate, you actually see what's in your blind spot from a camera on each door mirror. Love that.
Elsewhere, I've got 2 cup holders down here, wireless phone charger that fits my large iPhone perfectly, a lot of storage space in this central binnacle, and a ton of USB ports. I've got Type C and Type A down there, plus more storage down the bottom. Large door bins lined in felt so your spare change and your keys aren't jangling all over the place, and a pretty big glove box as well. As for technology, huge head-up display in front of me showing me my speed and my maps and my media playback. That's nice. And nice big screens for your infotainment and your driver display.
Here in the back, like with the front sport seats, you get a suede effect with the lime green stitching. Other than that, it's just like a normal Kia EV6, which means headroom's good, knee room's good. The only real major issues are the fact that the seat is quite close to the floor, so there's not much under thigh support, and you can't really stretch your legs out under the seat in front. Other than that, it's fine. Let's move on to practicality and storage space. So the Kia EV6 has a front boot. If you have the rear wheel drive version, you actually have cables, 20 litres. For this, cables for your phone. It's fine. Meanwhile at the back, the boot is average in size. For the standard Kia EV6, it's 490 litres. For this high performance version though, there's 10 litres less. It's a bit less space underneath here to store your real cables. That's because you've got a bigger, more powerful rear motor, and it just eats into space a little bit.
In the back, meanwhile, it's very similar to the standard EV6 but with sportier seats, though there is still good leg and headroom. The back has 2 USB ports along with a 3-pin electrical outlet, handy for charging laptops, etc., and fold-down armrests with cup holders. The boot, meanwhile, is adequate at 480 litres, though it's slightly smaller than the 490 litres you get in the model below, due to the GT having a larger rear motor. Storage in the front trunk is fairly disappointing at 20 litres, but it's a decent space to keep your charge cables.
Just like with the normal EV6, there is no wireless Apple Carplay or Android Auto, which means you have to plug the phone in if you want to use those functions, and your USB ports are there, and so you have to have the phone in this bin. That's particularly annoying with this high performance model, which you're going to be driving quickly, because your phone's going to end up rattling about in there as you hoon it around the bends. For some reason, in the UK, you currently can't specify the GT version of the EV6 with a panoramic sunroof. You can get it on the normal car, but not this high performance version. Don't know whether that'll change in future, but if you're buying one now, that could be rather frustrating. When the Germans do high performance versions of their electric cars, they like to add in some high performance sounds which add to the experience of driving the more expensive and quicker model. Kia could have done that, but they didn't. It makes the same noises as the standard EV6. For some reason, Kia has limited the paint choices on the GT version of the EV6 to just 3. This grey, a black and a white. That's your lot. While the range-topping version of the normal EV6, the GT line, comes with electric seats and standard, for some reason this more expensive GT doesn't get them. They're manually operated. Ooh. Now let's talk about the most exciting upgrades to this car, and that's to the motors. So they put out a combined 585 horsepower, which is 260 horsepower more than the standard dual motor version of the EV6. You've also got 740 Newton meters of torque, which is insane. Now Kia's also worked on the car's brakes, so they're bigger at the front and the rear compared to the standard car. They've also tweaked the suspension, so it's slightly softer at the front and stiffer at the rear to make the car a little bit more tail happy. There is one problem though. The GT version of the Kia EV6 is almost 100 kilos heavier than the normal dual motor car. It weighs in at 2.2 tons.
So what's it like to drive? Let me give you my first impressions. It feels like a Kia EV6, obviously, but slightly worse. And that's because the suspension has been tuned for sportiness. It's a very firm car. I know you should expect that, but I've got to say it.
Okay, let's see what this EV6 GT is like to drive. I'm in maximum attack mode, and my God, the throttle response is insane. See it like through the bends. Shoo. Oh, I cannot put down its power. Stays pretty flat through the turns. The steering is relatively quick, but you don't feel much through it. Oh, you can't fault the performance. But what you can fault is how it rides over bumps. Oh my gosh. British country roads are generally pretty bouncy, and this thing is just skipping all over the place.
There are a few driving modes. You get Eco, Normal and Sport with this button, and then GT mode with the big yellow button. In Eco and Normal, it's perfectly livable, but in Sport and GT, it's too hard for daily use.
What's this car like to daily drive? Well, the oomph from the extra performance is really handy when you're overtaking on the motorway. So I'm at 50 miles an hour now. I'm going to floor it in GT mode, and that's 70. You are up to speed. I like that. It is super, super quick.
What are the brakes like? Yeah, they're actually pretty good. They slow the car down pretty nicely, which is just as well because this is a 2.1 ton car. It's around 100 kilograms heavier than the standard EV6, and I'm actually quite impressed by that.
Doesn't ever feel quite as sporty as a Tesla Model 3 Performance. That is more fun to drive. It just is.
Well, let's talk about the range. It has a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, so no bigger than the standard car. And they say it'll do 263 miles on a charge, which works out to be an average of 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour.
I'll tell you what's also a little bit less relaxing, and that's the range. You see, Kia claims this high-performance version of the EV6 will do 263 miles on a charge, but I'm averaging 2.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which when you multiply that by the battery capacity of 77 kilowatt hours, you get a real-world range of 200 miles.
It's a bit of an odd car, this. The Kia EV6 GT should be a car that I love. It makes sense on paper. It ticks so many boxes. The standard EV6 is a car that I recommend with no hesitation whatsoever. And this thing should be even more desirable. It's got more power, better acceleration, it corners better, it's got really cool green brake calipers. But for some reason, I'm left slightly cold by the experience.
So then, what's my final verdict on the Kia EV6 GT? Should you avoid it, consider it, shortlist it, or just go right ahead and buy it? Well, I reckon you should shortlist it. It's not the most fun to drive performance EV, but you can't deny it's blooming quick.